Good now.
Okay, so about 20 years ago, I was in a very small town, and I went into a little art, I don't know, it was, like a gift shop or whatever, but they had a whole bunch of pottery in there, and there was this mug, and I fell in love with this mug. I'm like, well, this is so cool, and I was touching it, and pottery, clay stuff is so organic, and it feels so good, and I just loved it. Anyways, I was thinking, I don't know, how much is this? So I flipped it over to see how much it is, and it said on the bottom, I made this on a Tuesday. And I was like, well, that's cool. I don't know why I like that, but I'm like, that was made on a Tuesday, so I bought it. And anyways, from that moment on, I wrote on every one of my paintings. I painted this painting with Jerry Markham in a field. It was cold, very cold, but the beer was still good. And so lots of these paintings, and I've been told by a lot of people, they're like, I love that you wrote on the back of it, we bought your painting and we love the little saying. And I have even more paintings that are out there that I've written on the back, but there's paper on the back of the frame, and they have no idea that there's something written there. And someday, somewhere, somebody's going to reframe this or pull it out, and there's going to be a whole thing on there that's written. Anyway, so I've been doing that for 20 some odd years, so I got document proof that I drank with just about every artist out there.
That is really cool, like the personalized.
It's just a personal thing, and I saw that on the bottom of a pot and thought, I don't know, I got a connection with whoever, I don't even know who made this, but they made it on a Tuesday, that was kind of cool. And they wrote that, it had something for me. Anyways, okay. So, that's a little bit about, yes, please, sign your work. Put your name on there and don't be afraid. So, signing your work is also like signing a check or like signing a book or anything. This is your signature. This says, I'm a craftsman, and I put my name to this. Right? This is putting your stamp on there saying you're Mr. Chevrolet, you're Mr. Walter P. Chrysler, and you're going to put your name on a car. Right? You're Ray Kroc and going to call yourself McDonald's. No. It was the McDonald's brothers, and they put their name on it, right? Put your name on it. This is your name. Don't be afraid to put your name out there. And you're saying, hey, I'm a craftsman, and I signed this saying, I did the absolute best I could on this, and what did they say on those stupid commercials? I approve this ad. I approve this painting. So put your name on there. But, okay, that being said, when you put your name on there, clean, clear, not too big, not too small, not too bright, not too dull. Please make it straight, okay? Don't make it crooked. I have a pet peeve. A friend of mine has a signature. She's a very famous artist. I love her dearly. She's taught me immense amounts of things. But her signature drives me crazy because it's crooked and blobby. And it's the one thing I will give her, it's been consistent. It's been that way for 40 years, so I give her the consistency, but I wish it was a little more legible than it is, right? It looks like a little bit like a child signed it, and it's always driven me crazy, but I can't say anything to her because I love her too much. So when I say straight, okay, a couple things to think about. Straight. Remember, you're going to if you put your painting in a frame, that frame is square and has straight. And when you sign the bottom of the painting, if you sign it crooked, it comes up against this edge of the frame that is straight, so it'll look even more crooked. How do you solve that? I take something like a ruler or a straight edge, right where I'm going to sign it, and I'll just make a little line right where I'm about to sign it. Just a real soft line, tell myself that is straight, and then I sign on top of that. Because I'm left-handed, and I have a left-hand bias to my writing that fades to the left. So everything's crooked, and my stuff tends to do this. It tends to lift up a little and go this way. The right side's a little higher than the left side because of that. And so I'll sign something, and it looks fine. I stick it in the frame, and here's my name, crooked. And that drives me crazy. I don't want that, okay? So you want to make it straight if you can. I usually take a little bit of what I usually do is take my business card that's in the bottom. It's in my, I'm all over my studio. I just take a business card and I put it on there, and I draw a little line with pencil just so I know where it's going to go. And when I sign over it, you'll never see that line at all. Okay? Something else to think about. When you're putting your painting in a frame, remember the frame has about a 1/4 of an inch rabbet on it. The rabbet is the back depth thing that allows the painting to sink in there and stay in there. There's about a 1/4 of an inch all the way around. So if you sign the very bottom of your painting, and then you put this in, and then the frame cuts off after your signature, that's called amateur hour, right? That looks bad because you say, here, I took all this time to paint the painting, I put my signature on it, and then I had no idea that the frame was going to cover it up. It means you don't know what you're doing. So always move it up at least a 1/2 inch. Get that signature up there. If you're unsure, sign it when it's in the frame. But if you're going to sign it in the frame that has a liner on it, those white liners, be very careful, because you get a dot of paint on there, it's over. You will not clean that liner up, so be very careful. Sometimes what I will do is, if I don't know how deep the rabbit is, and remember, the smaller the painting, 1/4 inch on a 6x8 painting is a chunk of area. 1/4 inch on a 30x40 painting is nothing, right? So on my smaller paintings, what I'll do is I will take the painting, put it in the frame, then I'll take my card and draw the line, then I'll take the painting out and sign it. Okay? What did I say here? No, so what I'm saying, clean, clear, not too big, not too small. Don't sign the painting with a giant name that says Tom as big as the painting, okay? You don't want to be a braggart here. And you don't want to sign it so small that it's hidden in the painting, so, we got to play Where's Waldo to find out who did this painting. All right? Straight, legible. So we'll talk a little bit about legible, keeping it simple, not too long. So if your name is Vander Hoogland Slog McLaughlin III, right, you may want to think about shortening your name to something else. But one of the teachers we have here at the store, her name is Karen Swearingen. She's been crabbing for 40 years about Swearingen, Sweareagean. It's like, she has this long name, it takes her longer to sign the painting than it did to paint the painting. So, but she just keeps signing her name like that. I would just say, you should just put Karen on it, I think. But anyways, if you got a long name, maybe you want to shorten it. Maybe you don't want to write your whole name. If you got a long first name and a long last name, you may want to think about shortening that. Couple other things to think about. Use a color that fits the painting. So there are people out there, my friend that I paint with a lot, that I've painted with a lot, and is a very good friend, my Ken Gillespie, signs everything in red. But at least he's consistent. He signs it on an angle, so it's not straight, and it's always in red. And kind of drives me a little crazy because it pops a little and it is on an angle and it goes against everything I have, but at least it's in the same place on every painting and it's consistent. So he's kind of it's become like one of those, what they call a Chinese block, those things, the chop that they put on there. It's like a stamp for him. And his paintings have been that way for 25 years. He's had the same signature. So you know instantly when you see it, you go, oh, that's a Gillespie. It says Gillespie in the corner in red. That's an idea. Sue Contini, who works here, she signs her paintings along the side, but she has a really fancy scroll signature, and she just writes it up the side on every painting, which I at first thought was kind of crazy. What are you doing that for? But now that I see it all the time, I quite like it. And you kind of have to look for it a little bit, but once you see it, it's very consistent and it's very clean and very nice. But she manages to get up the side. So where do you sign it? Where do you put your signature on the painting? Well, I don't have a rule for where you put it. John Singer Sargent signed lots of his on the top. I know that Soroya signed lots of his on the top as well. That's fine if it fits. My thing is, you sign it on the left-hand side, right-hand side. Well, the general rule of thumb is in the bottom right-hand corner. That's the normal rule. That's where probably 90% of people sign it, which is fine. But I say you can sign it anywhere you want. Robert McGinnis and Scott Christensen sign theirs in the middle at the bottom, which is fine. If it's tiny and small and clean and doesn't inhibit the painting, then you can pretty much sign it anywhere. I put my signature either on the left or the right-hand side, but I will use my signature also as a compositional tool. So in a lot of cases, if I have a wide open river coming out of the painting and the river tends to flow and goes out to the left, and I have a wide open space on the left, I may not sign it there. It may be, it'll pop too much. If it's clean and that water's still and you can't see anything, I may not want to put my signature there because it's a blank area and it shows up too much. I may want to move it over to the other side. If you have mountains and trees and a focal point that's right here in the painting, you may not want to sign it right below that, and it's called stacking, and then you don't want to stack all of your elements together. You may then want to move your signature over to the other side to create balance. So you can use the signature as a compositional aid. You can also use it as what they call a stopper or a blocker. Sometimes if you have too much grass flowing out the one side of a painting, you can put your signature there and it'll stop the eye from falling out of the painting. So rather than just jumping to the end and signing the painting because you're happy that you're done your painting, you need to think about it a little bit. Where am I going to put my signature on this painting? Where would it look the best? Then again, that being said, try to use some colors that are incorporated into the painting. If you have a mostly blue painting, well then don't sign it green, all right? Sign it in blue, but sign it either a little bit lighter or a little bit darker. So if you have a dark passage in your painting, please don't sign it in white because it sticks out like a sore thumb. If you have a white passage, don't sign it in black, right? If you have a light blue area in your painting, then maybe you want to sign it with just a value darker or a value grayer, right? You want it to be legible, you want to be able to see the signature, but you don't want it screaming at the same time. And nor do you want it, like I said, play Where's Waldo and have it so hidden you can't see it anymore, right? Hiding your signature sounds like you're frightened and scared and you weren't sure whether this was a good painting or not. Signing it too big and bold just says that you've got an ego the size of mine, so. Something else to think about, signing, please if you can, sign the painting in the same medium that you're using, right? So a lot of people will paint the painting and then what they do is they varnish the painting and then they'll go and take a pen and sign it after. So a couple of reasons you don't want to do that. Galleries don't like that and historians don't like it. First of all, don't sign over top of the varnish. The varnish is there to protect the painting and to be able to be stripped off so that we can clean the painting, bring it back to life. It's like, you know, the old floor waxing when you used to, no one here remember waxing your floors and putting, what was that, future wax on there. My mom used to do that, put that on and wax the floor. So varnish is like wax. You put it on to give it luster and shine and to bring the life of the painting up. When that gets dirty, filthy, and old, you strip it off and you put new varnish on and it brings the painting back to life. If you sign a painting over top of the varnish, well, guess what? As soon as the conservator starts to strip the varnish off, bye-bye goes the signature, and I've had signatures disappear before my eyes. My rule of thumb when restoring a painting, the very first thing is test a little corner on the painting, then test the signature and make sure that it's not about to come off, right? So you want to sign the painting, then varnish it. If you sign it in something other than what you painted in, that says to art restoration people that maybe this is a forgery. Maybe this wasn't signed by the artist because it's not used with the same stuff that the artist used. They used something else after. So they think, well, why would they do that? Why is this signed in acrylic but painted in oil? This is kind of weird, right? So just in case one of you gets famous and is worth a lot of money, I'm just protecting your value here. Okay? All right, so you don't want to sign on the top. You want to sign in the same thing if you can. Now, all of that being said, I will also on my outdoor paintings, because signing a wet painting can be hard. So on my outdoor paintings, when I finish them, quite often I'll just flip my brush over my little brush and I'll just scratch my name into the paint. Nothing wrong with scratching your name in, but if you're scratching it in, keep it consistent. So the whole key here is that once you've figured out a signature and what to do to sign your paintings with this signature, please keep it consistent. Okay? Don't change the signature all the time and have different styles and different things. It's confusing. Your signature is part of your branding, right? So you're going to sign that painting and that brand, that signature can become a logo for yourself that people recognize. I see R.F. McGinnis right away and I know, I see that signature is a logo to me. My buddy Jerry Markham signs his paintings Markham, but what he does is he writes a big M and then he writes Markham, when then the other M is big, and when you look at it, you can read Markham. It's scribbled on there, but the two M's at either end is like a logo for him. The minute you see that in the corner, you walk up and you see that little logo, you go, oh, that's a Markham right there. I know it is. I know that signature. So it's a little bit of branding. It's a little bit of a way to get a little more identification out of your, a little more viewing time, so to speak, out of the painting. So you think about this. The average time that a person spends looking at a piece of art is about 5 seconds. They walk in a gallery, they look at a piece of art, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's nice. Here's another painting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a nice painting. Here's another painting. 1, 2. Oh, I don't like that one. Let's move on. Here's a painting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They look at it for 5 seconds. So if they like the painting that you've painted in that 5 seconds, what's the next thing that they do? They go to the little card, the little tag that's there, and they look at the tag and they read the name of the painting. And if the name of the painting, the title of the painting, is in sync with the painting, so that they look at it and it says green trees and it says morning trees, they're happy. If they look at it and it's green trees and it says my last hot dog, what? And they're out. They're gone. If they look at the tag, they like the name on the tag and it matches the painting, what's the next thing they do? They look at the name of the artist and go right to the signature. They want to see that name and they look at the signature. Do I recognize the signature? Do I know this person? Is this someone famous? So you're going to get 2 or 3 more seconds out of them by having a nice signature on there. And if it's legible and they can read the last name and it matches the tag, you're getting a couple more seconds. And I'm telling you, that couple of seconds can make or break the wallet coming out of the back pocket to see if they're going to buy a painting. Right? Also, putting your name on there, legible, clean, and nice, is the stamp saying, I'm a craftsman, I have quality work, and it shows in my signature as well. I'm going to put my name on this. Why would you spend 30 hours on a painting and then 2 seconds signing it like a 12-year-old? I should say 2-year-old. 12-year-old probably sign better than I do. Like a 2-year-old. If you put a bad signature on there, then it says that you have no pride in your craftsmanship because you just scrawled your name on there, and you're more about trying to sell a painting and get money for it than you are about the craftsmanship. Put your name on there, clean, clear, and legible. All right? So, let's just keep going. I got to the things about how to do that in a sec here. Yeah, use the same mediums. Yes, yes. Identifiable, yes. On top of the varnish, yes. Not footnote, yes. Slogans, and like I say, so do you print your name? Do you write your name? How are you going to do this? That is totally up to you. I don't care how you do it. I just keep going back to keep it consistent, keep it legible. Don't make it too bright. Don't make it too dull. Right? And you're going to have to practice this. So. I don't care if you write it. I have a calligraphic thing that drives some people crazy, and I've been told, why do you use like this script calligraphy to write your name on your painting when you do all this sort of loosey-goosey stuff? Why don't you have some crazy signature on there? Well, the reason I do that is where my signature came from, I have a box downstairs. It's my father's toolbox. And in his grade 12 class, everyone had to make a toolbox. And part of grade 12 woodshop was you made a toolbox, but also part of grade 12, whatever it was, industrial arts, and I don't know when it was, 1640 or whenever he was around. You took sign painting, and you had to learn how to sign paint and use brush sign paint. So he has, in calligraphic things, DLS. His middle name was Lane, Douglas Lane Swinton. He has DLS on this box, so I used to write DBS on all my paintings because I thought that was super cool. And so for a long time I wrote DBS just thinking that will be my logo. I don't care if they know what my last name is, they're going to know that logo. Until I realized that that'll never happen and no one will know DBS, and I should put my last name on there or they're never going to know who I am. So it went to DB Swinton, and now it's just been shortened to Swinton because I don't need the DB and I'm tired of writing those letters calligraphically on the bottom of the painting. So I just write Swinton, and I've stylized it a little more over the years that it's a little less calligraphic and a little more loose because people kept going, my sign, it used to be super old Roman text on there, now it's a little looser. So I've in your signature will change over the years and will morph, but basically I'm going to show you Degas' signature in a minute here, and you'll see over 10 years it's different, but it's kind of the same. So whether you write it, print it, I don't care how you do it, just keep it consistent that way. Okay? We talked about where to put it. Okay, so what about how do you do this? How do you sign a painting? So if you're in watercolor, sign it in watercolor with a watercolor brush. If you're doing drawings, you can sign it in pencil, and writing and signing in pencil is fairly easy. But when you're doing acrylic paintings and you're doing oil paintings, how do we sign a painting? How do you do that? So for me, what I do is I use a liner brush, a big long liner brush, like this. And I know most people, as soon as I pull it out and they look at me and I'm going to sign my painting with that, they gasp and go, oh my God, how are you going to do that? Those brushes are so floppy and so hard to work with. Well, part of the reason I use them is two reasons. One, it comes to a really nice point, so I can get a very fine signature out of it. And two, that long hair and a liner brush holds enough paint that I can get it all done. Right? If you have a little teeny tiny pointy brush, then you're going to do one letter back to the paint and one letter. And little brushes like that, what happens is the first mark that you put on with the little brush is loaded with paint and it's good. So you do the little down part, and then when you do the R part, it runs out of paint and it gets skinny. So the next one is the same thing. It starts big and then gets small. So you get this blobby signature out of it. So I use a liner brush because it'll go consistently all the way through. I can do my whole name with everything that I want in there. But it takes practice. So what I suggest when you practice is a few things. You want to keep the paint viscous enough that it's going to flow off the brush, but not so viscous that it's transparent and you can't see anything. So I would highly suggest signing the painting when it's dry, because it's much easier, because if you're like me and you screw up all the time, then you can just take your thumb and wipe it out and do it again. You can't do that when it's wet. So I try and sign my paintings when they're dry. All of that being said, there's quite often I am literally sending wet paintings to the gallery. The paint, I've just finished the painting, it goes in a frame and it's wet and my signature's wet, and I tell them, don't touch, the painting's wet. Galleries hate that, but I do it all the time. Just I'm always so far behind. So anyways, so if you can, sign it when it's dry. A couple things you can practice with. Practice on your palette. Just practice, put your name, write your name 30, 40, 50 times. Just practice it with a liner brush and get used to using. How thick should my paint be? How viscous should it be? Is this too flowy? Is this not flowy enough? Right? You just need to practice. I have a glass palette. My palette is about this big at home. And then I have wings on the side with my paint, but it's big. And sometimes I will just I'll just practice once before I hit the painting, just so that I'm back in the game again. But you need to find the consistency right. If you don't have glass, a piece of glass, just get a scrap. Ask me for a scrap of canvas in the back. We have lots of little pieces of canvas. You can take canvas and you can practice writing on it a whole bunch of times. Right? So you just get used to doing it, and how big, how small. Of course, bigger paintings, your name's going to be bigger. Smaller paintings, your signature is going to be smaller. Use a smaller brush on the smaller ones. You can use a big brush. And like I say, I erase mine all the time. Do not be afraid to erase your name off of there, and don't feel like, oh God, I have no idea what I'm doing here. You will get the hang of it, and you will get better and better and better at it all the time. Yeah, well, and it's hard in watercolor because you can't really erase it, right? So what a lot of people do in watercolor is they sign it in pencil first and then paint over top of the pencil. And pencil, most of you probably know, paint watercolor will erase after you've painted in watercolor. You can erase the pencil. Pencil has a lot of oil in it, and the water doesn't want to stick to the oil, so you can go and just erase it afterwards. So you can sign it in pencil, then copy that signature in watercolor, and then erase the pencil afterwards.
You talked about Sharpies. What about oil Sharpies?
Yeah, so there are some pens that you can use that are permanent and good. There are paint markers out there that you just gotta ask, are these light fast, okay, and bleed proof. So do not use Sharpie or any of those cheaper regular black markers, because they do fade and they will disappear. Pigma pens, those Pigma liners or Statler liners, those are all fine. Anything with a pigmented ink is good. The paint pens are mostly always good. Don't use like, the acrylic ones, the Posca markers, they're all permanent. They're good. You just can't use the cheap indelible inky ones that are, Sharpies are just crap. The Sharpie, when it hits a lot of ultraviolet light, will turn blue. It gets more transparent blue. It also bleeds a little bit too, and you don't want your signature to get bleedy on there. But if you need a pen to sign it, there are lots of pens that you can use. Just ask the people at the front, is this light fast? That's mostly what you're worried about, that it's not going to disappear on you after a while.
Is it what?
Light fast.
Light fast?
Light
Oh,
fast.
light fast.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, if it smells like grape, it's probably not your pen. I think they used to call them indelible, and then indelible marker meant that it wouldn't fade. Laundry markers used to be indelible or whatever. They still do fade. Those things, they turn blue after a while, and your signature gets really faded, and that looks cheap and crappy too. So you definitely don't need that happening to your work, right? So keeping it clean, legible, straight, and finding a way so that it looks good. It takes practice. It takes a little bit of work, but it'll make your work look really good. Nothing worse than having a beautiful painting with a crappy signature on it, or the signature's buried under the frame. All that makes you look like you're an amateur, right? So you want to keep it there. I mean, this is your work. You're signing it. Be professional about it. Okay, do we have questions? I know that was short and fast, but there isn't a lot to this. It's mostly practice. Like I say, getting a long liner brush and keeping your paint viscous and making it flow off the brush and finding out what size to do it. And like I say, there are times I sign my painting and I look and go, oh, that's way too big. Like, that's huge. And then sometimes I'll sign it and it's too small, or I can't see it, or it's I have to erase it all the time. That's fine. It's no big deal. I usually have varnishing and signing day, where I'm doing all that crappy stuff that that I don't like to do. So I'll sign 10 paintings, you know, and I'll line them all up, and I'll just have a day where I'm signing them all.
You were talking about when you varnish your paintings, eventually, if it's in a gallery or something, they might want to revarnish it. But there's a couple of varnishes out there that are like permanent, they say. Can you still take those off and revarnish it?
Well, any oil varnish that's out there for oil painting is not permanent. There is no permanent oil varnish. The acrylic varnishes are permanent. So if you buy a polymer varnish, like a polymer gloss varnish, that is what they consider a permanent varnish. So I tell people, now, I guess I should go back. Those permanent varnishes can be removed. You can remove them. The problem is what you're removing the varnish with may also remove the acrylic. So my suggestion for anyone in acrylic painting is to varnish with a methyl acrylate varnish. So there are removable, it's a methyl, what they call an MSA varnish. Golden makes MSA, which means it's a mineral spirit acrylate varnish. So it is a removable varnish that you can use something different to remove the varnish and it won't affect the acrylic. So I always recommend that. Their sprays are good. The MSA sprays are fantastic. Anything. Now the Golden will tell you that the polymer varnish, not the MSA varnish, but the high polymer varnish, that's really to be used for outdoors. That's for murals and stuff. So it takes a lot of beating. You know, you can have kids run their bicycle up against it and it's not going to hurt it. It has a light fastness rating in it that has a light fast saver in there that also helps the painting stay. Those varnishes, they can be removed, but they're more for outdoor, not for indoor. Watercolors, so of late, and I used to paint watercolor a whole lot, I still varnish my watercolors. I put Kmart varnish on them. I like varnish on my watercolors because the one problem that I have with watercolor is it looks so beautiful when you paint it on and it's wet, and the refractive index of the light going through there, and it's like a stone. You take a rock and you put it in water and it's purple and it's like, oh, that's so beautiful, and then when it dries it's flat and boring. So watercolor does the same thing. So I varnish my watercolors with Kmart varnish. A lot of people now have taken to, because of the golden varnishes the way they are varnishing their watercolors with an acrylic varnish. And what they're doing is they're not framing them under glass anymore. They're doing them on board, and then they're varnishing them with an acrylic varnish, bringing that refractive index back up into the color. The color all comes back on the board, and then they're framing it under a regular oil painting or traditional oil or acrylic frame, not under glass. Lots of galleries now don't even want watercolors. They don't want to deal with glass. They hate it. So this is a way to still have watercolors. I mean, you look at Alex Fong, if you go to his website, all his paintings, they're all done with an acrylic, with an MSA varnish on there.
So Doug, when you're saying paint on a board, do you mean the canvas board?
No, they paint watercolor, they mount watercolor to board. And then they paint on, because the problem with, you can varnish it on the paper itself, but putting all that varnish on there sometimes makes the paper cockle a little bit, wave and cockle. So, like what Alex does is he orders 40 by 60 sheets of Arches 300-pound paper, which is already a pretty heavy paper, but we mount it to foam core, to an archival foam core, and then it's on a rigid surface, and he has a 40 by 60, so he does all these long, crazy paintings that are skinny and long and weird shaped paintings. So he can cut them up, but now they're on board, and then he just varnishes them with an MSA, a methyl acrylate varnish from Golden, and then he puts them in an oil painting frame with a regular liner on them and sells them to the gallery. And they sell like hotcakes. They look fantastic. You'd almost not know they're watercolor, except that the colors, you know how watercolor can bleed together so nicely and give you stuff that no other paint can do? Well, you can do that now, and you can varnish them with that. And so that, and then you can sign your painting, then varnish the painting after you've signed it. Right, so you put your signature on there, and then you put the varnish on there, and it'll bring all those colors back to life again. All right.
What if you're using a name that others use, the same name? Like if you're just using your first name, is there a rule against that?
Well, there's not a rule against it, but I will say that bringing to mind, I'll get to that in a sec. If you're copying someone's artwork or copying an artist, and the people will tell you don't sign it. I have no problem with you signing it. I just would recommend that you give the artist that you're copying credit and sign it. And you can say J. Peterson after Vermeer or after Degas or whoever, and say, you know, give the artist credit that you copied it from, right? So as to your name and what you want to use, that comes down to a whole bunch of branding too. If your name is Andy Smith, well, you know, maybe if your name is Andy Stewart Smith, you don't want to sign your painting ASS. You got to find a way that your signature becomes sort of a trademark or a logo to identify yourself against every other Smith that's out there. Smith is a problem, right? If there's 100, how many artists you look up A. Smith, and there's got to be 100 of them show up. So what are you going to do to differentiate yourself? Can you use a middle initial? Can you shorten it? Can you find a way? Like I'll show you Albert Durer's signature here in a minute. He has a logo that he did with the AD that was his trademark, right? So, you know, where he was from, Durer was such a common name that he was one of 1,000 of them, right? So how do you differentiate yourself? Well, that's how you got to figure out. That's branding and logoing and finding out how you can become different than anything else. Because that name too is the same thing. Like you say, how do you differentiate yourself on the internet from, you know, being Andrew Smith? How do you get looked up on that? So that's a whole marketing strategy in itself, right? So find a signature that's going to work for you, practice it and get something that you know shows up a little different than everybody else, so they know that name and they can read it, but they also know it as a logo. Oh yeah, I know her. I know that logo. I know who she is. Yeah, I've seen her work before. All right. More questions?
What about a stamp at the end of your name if it's the same as everybody else?
You could use a chop or a stamp. A lot of people will, and put a little signet, a little thing on there. Absolutely, you can do that. Yes. You know, that's a way to, again, to have, if you can't find a way to get your name good, have something carved out that you can stamp right on there and say, yeah, here it is. I mean, in Chinese they call it a chop, right? And they have those up and down things with the things, and then some guys they'll put the chop on there, and then a guy will put a signature on top of that too. Any way that you can to keep it clean, keep it legible, and keep it consistent, but you want to brand yourself as well somehow with that, right? Then you're going to get somewhere with it.
What about if you have a long name, and I know you said paint it smaller on the smaller paintings, but even so, what if it just still is like way too big?
It's an issue, right? How do you do that? How do you?
Is it okay to do like just your initials in a specific way, always on your small ones, and then?
See, I wouldn't want to change it from small to big. Like that's, you know, that's not consistent, right? So you're gonna have to find a way to shorten your name, or to don't put your whole first name on there, or you just gotta write it. You just gotta find a way. But you could, on the smaller ones, you know, rather than use a brush, is scratch into the painting with something very fine, so that, you know, it's still legible, but you don't notice it. It's not so big, so it could be all across the bottom of the painting. How long is your last name?
Nicolaisen.
What is it?
Nicolaisen.
It's long enough that it would be annoying to write 400 times. Yeah, you'll find a way. But then, like, what's your first name?
Debbie.
Yeah, so you can put Deb, and then an N and just a at the end, right? And they're gonna know who that is, right? Then on the back, you're gonna write Nicolaisen on the back of it on every painting that's there. But you need to be Deb N, right? And you need to have a stylized N with the rip at the end of it that they all know. Oh, I know her for sure. Yeah, that's that chick with the long name that you can't say. There, so probably only $5. All right. Okay. I'll go through. I didn't have a lot of time to download a whole bunch of these, but if you guys you can come up here and just stand around. But I'll just show you some guys that I got this morning real fast just for fun.